Hello and welcome to the interview. The US was supposed to withdraw all troops from Afghanistan by 2017. Now military commanders are talking about a commitment that could see troops staying in the country for decades. They're facing a resilient Taliban insurgency, as well as groups such as Al-Qaeda and Islamic State. There are now nearly 10,000 US forces in Afghanistan, and under current plans, President Obama should halve that number by the time he leaves office. But it looks as though he might defer the decision to his successor in the White House. Meanwhile, the power struggles within the Afghan government have undermined its effectiveness on security as well as on other issues. To discuss the state of play, I'm joined by Barnett Rubin, a man who knows the region as well as anybody in US policy circles. From 2009 until 2013, Dr. Rubin was the senior advisor to the special representative of the US president for Afghanistan and Pakistan. He's now senior fellow at the Center on International Cooperation at New York University. Barnett Rubin, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much.
Afghanistan is often described as being in a state of endless war. Is that how you see it?
Well, of course, it's too early to tell. But it is true that it's been in a state of war since 1978, which is to say over 37 years now. And that's an important corrective to people who think that the war started in 2001 when the United States and the West became involved. And given the youth of the population, particularly, half the people are under 15 years old. For most of the people there, war is all the only thing that they've known.
Of course, Afghanistan gets quite a bad press in the Western media, usually. Do you think the situation is as bad as we're led to believe?
Well, of course, the situation isn't one-dimensional. Clearly, many people in Afghanistan are very frightened of the future, which I think is less because of the current situation than because of the direction they see it moving in. They see it deteriorating gradually now, but they also know that the advances that they have made in education, health, and even, at least in the urban areas, in some degree of security, are all very fragile and are dependent on foreign funding and foreign presence, and they don't know that those will be there. So especially young people are leaving in large numbers to try to assure themselves of a better life somewhere else.
Do you sense that the U.S. commitment to that funding to support that process is now dwindling? Is the political will dwindling in the U.S.?
I think that the political will to do that has eroded everywhere. It's still there to some extent, in particular because we have seen some reemergence of Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan, as well as a new presence of the Islamic State, but a presence which is only based on the fear of international terrorist organizations does not lead to a coherent policy to stabilize the country. And that's part of the problem that we have had the last 15 years.
And on the lack of a coherent policy, you've argued that perhaps the biggest mistake under the Obama administration has been to focus too much on the military dimension, not enough on the political track.
Well, that was even a bigger mistake under the Bush administration. The Obama administration tried to correct that to some extent, and I was very much a part of that effort. But when you have such a large number of troops, it's inevitable that the Defense Department dominates the decision-making. The President and the people of the United States are very sensitive to casualties, which is, I'm not saying, which is a good thing, that we are not indifferent to the lives of our soldiers. But it also means that sometimes avoiding casualties or force protection becomes the objective rather than strategy. And as I have sometimes argued, if our objective is force protection, the best way to assure it is to withdraw from Afghanistan. However, the United States has made an effort since 2009, about the time I joined the government, to define a political outcome, which is more than just using military force to keep the current government in power, to shape the region in a way that supports Afghanistan, not shape it in a passive way, but to work with the governments in the region and to work with the Afghan government to seek a political settlement.
And how do you think that effort went? Has it basically run aground?
No, it's being, well, first, no such effort ever moves in a unilateral direction without reversals, and this one has had plenty of them. Right now, there's a renewed effort involving, interestingly, a four-sided group, the Quadrilateral Cooperation Group, with the United States, China, Pakistan, and Afghanistan, which, by the way, is the first time that China has ever cooperated politically with the United States in such a framework, and is an indication of how much at the future of Afghanistan is of interest to China now. And they're trying to reach agreement on a common framework for negotiating with the Taliban. China has also promised to engage in massive investments in infrastructure, which will transform the region economically if those investments are actually made.
So you sense that this political strategy that was first defined when you joined the government, that's now starting to pay off with this new multilateral effort to find peace?
Well, it's not exactly the same one that we decided, that we worked on, because the situation has changed since then. But it's on the basis of that. The U.S. had not, under the Bush administration, the U.S. actually opposed a political settlement with the Taliban because it wanted to punish them for having had Osama bin Laden under their protection. And it didn't have a coherent idea about what to do with them in the future of Afghanistan, except to hope that they would go away. Under the Obama administration, we agreed to support the policy, which was the policy of President Karzai and is now the policy of President Ghani, to seek some kind of a political settlement with the Taliban.
What kind of settlement do you think could be reached with them?
The most important part of it would be that they would have to, first of all, settlement doesn't mean solving all the political problems in Afghanistan. And it doesn't mean that the Taliban would have to achieve all of their objectives, because that's completely unacceptable. It means that through negotiation, you find out what both sides would be willing to live with without engaging in violence, and then they can continue their political quest for their goals through other means. The Taliban have said that their most important demand is the withdrawal of U.S. and all foreign troops from Afghanistan. Now, actually, that may sound like contrary to U.S. policy, because the U.S. has said that it's going to keep troops in Afghanistan. But I can assure you that the objective of the United States is to withdraw all United States troops from Afghanistan.
But beyond that, the Taliban don't recognize multi-party elections, for example. They would never sign up to the current Afghan political system, would they?
They have never said that. They have never said that they want to reestablish the Islamic Emirate, which was what they called their government. They say they want to establish an Islamic system, but they haven't defined it.
But of course, to bring them to that settlement, and this is something you've argued in your writings, one would need to deny them of their sanctuary in Pakistan in order to basically lessen their hand at the negotiating table. And is that happening at the moment?
Well, you'd have to do that not only as a way of getting them to the table, but you'd have to assure that it would be a core part of implementing the agreement. Because anytime you have an agreement to bring an armed group into non-military politics, you have to be sure that they do abandon their military capacity. And the Taliban's is mainly located in Pakistan. For now, Pakistan is not doing that. That's been the obstacle all along. Pakistan says it will do that as a result of an agreement between Afghanistan and the Taliban, and it wants the Afghan government to make offers first. The Afghan government says, unless you do something to lessen the violence that the Taliban are wreaking in Afghanistan, we will not have the political space to negotiate with them, because it makes the people hate them so much. So that's where it's stalled now.
I'd like to get your reaction to the statement of the Pakistani ambassador to Paris, who spoke to our Focus program, just to see what the state of play is regarding the Taliban in Afghanistan and Pakistan. Let's take a quick listen.
Pakistan is already fighting the war. We have already started our military operations since June 2014. It gained pace after the attack at the Army Public School in Peshawar. And as of now, the situation is getting much better in Pakistan.
Do you dismiss that statement as public relations then?
No, that statement is true, except the war he's talking about is not the one we were talking about. Pakistan has undertaken a serious military operation against the Pakistani Taliban, who attacked Pakistan and are responsible for the activities that he mentioned there. It has not undertaken any comparable operation against other terrorist groups, and there are many, many terrorist groups in Pakistan because of its long history of using them as part of its foreign policy. There's the Afghan Taliban, and there are also a variety of groups who are used to attack India. For instance, one of those groups attacked an Indian military base right across the border recently. So far, all they've done is take into what they call protective custody the leader of that group, who is a well-known and wanted terrorist.
So at the moment, does that mean that the AfPak strategy isn't really coherent? That's to say, a strategy bringing together Afghanistan and Pakistan to find peace?
I think the strategy is coherent, but it hasn't succeeded yet. And one has to give it. I'm not saying it will work. I don't know that it will work. Odds are against it.
Are there any other levers the US can apply to make it work at this stage?
Well, first, it's not a matter of just pressuring Pakistan, and it's not just a matter of the U.S. First thing is, I would say, most important, Pakistan needs the massive investment that China has promised for its own existence, because it's very short on energy, it needs transport, its economy is in a very poor situation, and the Chinese have made it clear that they are not going to deliver that investment if there is no security in Pakistan and if there is no security in Afghanistan. Just as they have a copper mine in Afghanistan they've been trying to exploit for several years, and they haven't been able to do it. So that's a huge incentive for Pakistan to do that. They'll actually gain something from it. The United States can do some similar things, but really I think the ability to, you see, for Pakistan, this is for the Pakistan military anyway, they consider this an existential issue. They believe there's a threat from India and Afghanistan and from cross-border ethnic ties. And people don't give up policies that are that important to them just under pressure. They have to see an alternative.
Very difficult knot to untie. Thank you so much for sharing your views, Dr. Barnett Rubin, former senior advisor to the US Special Representative of the US President for Afghanistan and Pakistan. That's all on this edition of The Interview on France 24.